Hello, welcome to Module 8. Congratulations on getting almost through this course and to the final week. This is a busy week as you look at the assignments that you have due this week. So we will jump right into Module 8. Let me drag this down a little bit here. So one of the things that we have not yet talked about in this class in much detail is the IEP process. And before we wrapped up the course, I wanted to make sure that we spent a little bit of time on that. And so I've included some videos this week that will cover that. Today we're going to talk about parent involvement. I've included this poem to the right that for you to read while I'm talking. The parent perspective as we think about the IEP is really important, and we're going to, in this presentation today, we're going to talk a little bit about how special education is the most litigious part of the educational system. So there are more lawsuits filed in special education, more complaints, more due process hearings, and so much of it is because we as educators haven't done enough to involve parents in the IEP process. And so, this poem is certainly written from a parent's perspective about an IEP war, and that is definitely not the approach that we are looking for as we think about an IEP. However, it does challenge us when you read this part about confusion sets in, I'm chatting with the experts. You think about what the IEP feels like, and I know some of you have been in IEP meetings and some of you may not have been, but parents are outnumbered. We throw around a lot of jargon. We talk about a lot of data. We do all these things that can lead parents to be frustrated, overwhelmed, and in some cases to take legal action against the school district. And so it's really important that we focus on what makes an effective IEP. And Dr. Yell talks about that in his video, and what he really emphasizes is present levels of performance and the data, how important data is, and how measurable annual IEP goals are the most important part of the IEP. Now, you can't have those without strong data, but what he will say in the part of the video, and it's a long video, but you'll see in the directions I ask you to watch about a 22-minute clip of it at the least. What he will say is that the goals are the driver of the IEP, and that is the best thing that we as educators can do to have a legally justifiable IEP is to have strong, measurable annual goals and to show that a student makes progress on those goals. So we may make mistakes in the IEP. There may be other things that parents challenge about the IEP or the services. The most important thing that we can do is to have strong goals that a student is making progress on, and that we have data to support that they're making that progress. And so you'll hear more about that from Dr. Yell. And the other piece that I have included, the other video that I've included, is about LA Unified, and it's a PBS 9-minute clip about parents that filed a lawsuit in the 90s that became a class action lawsuit about the special education services that were being provided, and now what that education looks like in LA Unified today. So, as an educator, I would often get frustrated with parents that filed legal action against the schools because I felt like we were doing everything possible to meet the needs of their children, and in most cases, their children were making progress. However, LA Unified is an example of where the only way that change was going to occur was if a parent took legal action. So there are times when that's the right course of action, and that's why parents have that ability to do that. So again, just some examples from the news about litigation in special education. Interestingly, the Disability Scoop article that's right in the middle, handful of states account for most IDEA court decisions. Illinois is way up there in the top 10. And so, as you think about the likelihood, if you're a special education teacher, that you may be in some kind of a situation where there are legal actions that are either a complaint or due process hearing, it can happen, and that's part of why it's important that we have strong, defensible IEPs. The article at the very bottom is one just from here on the north side of Indianapolis. Carmel Clay is one of the biggest school districts that we have in the Indy area, and the family won a lawsuit when they challenged about their child's special education. So it is important that we have defensible IEPs that are meeting the needs of our students, and that we're supporting parents as much as possible to be a part of that process. Because the alternative to that is parents taking legal action, and nobody wins in that situation. So as we talk about goals, and what you'll hear more, from Dr. Yell, and most of you I'm sure are familiar with SMART goals, but that really is one of the best ways that you can write legally defensible IEP goals, making them specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. Those are the key components that make a goal defensible and make it more easily able to show that a student has made progress, which is the whole point of an IEP and the whole point of special education. So to give you some examples of that, sometimes you'll pick up an IEP, or you might get a move-in IEP from another district, and you'll look at the goals and think, how did this ever pass through the system? But this is some of the examples of IEPs that you might see or you might inherit. Jill will comprehend a story. Bobby will use appropriate social skills. Jake will listen to directions. Those are really hard to measure. How do I measure comprehension with just this? How do I know that Jill comprehended a story? You and I might disagree about what appropriate social skills are. So how are we ever going to hold Bobby accountable for using appropriate social skills? I can't tell when Jake is listening. That's not something that I can easily measure. So instead of those, an example would be Jill will answer 3 questions related to a story twice a week. So I'm starting to get more specific about exactly what behavior am I looking for. Bobby will stand 2 feet from his communication partner during 3 conversations daily. I'm going to have to measure this 3 times daily, so maybe I want to say 1 time daily or 2 times daily. It's going to depend on how significant the behavior is. But if I've written the goal this way, I've got to be able to measure it. Jake will follow 3 directions upon arrival each morning. Again, I've got to measure it. If I put it in a goal, I'm saying this is something I'm going to measure over the next year. And so making it more specific, making it so that anyone can come in and pick up a student's IEP and collect data on that goal. Susan will spell words correctly 100% of the time. We're in graduate school. Some of us don't spell correctly 100% of the time. I don't spell correctly 100% of the time. So sometimes we write goals that aren't even realistic. Joshua will speak and complete sentences throughout the day. Really, the entire day, thinking about goals in terms of, are they really measurable? So on her weekly spelling test, Susan will correctly spell 8 out of 10 words. Or at lunchtime, Joshua will use 3 complete sentences to speak to his classmates. Or maybe I don't care so much about lunch and I'm not there to collect data at lunch. So maybe it's during class. Joshua will answer 3 questions daily using complete sentences. So again, thinking about what those start to look like. Here's some other IEP goals, just to give you an idea of how we can start to look at these. So when you think about this example, Steve will acquire 2 new skills per quarter, including table manners, phone etiquette, and organizational skills. So I'm trying to be as specific as possible as to really what we are measuring. Clear criteria based on present levels. So I'm saying that I want Steve to demonstrate those skills at 75%. The only way I can know that 75% is appropriate is if I've collected data on that beforehand. So I'm assuming if this is my goal at the end of the year, maybe he's only at 50% right now. And so I think a realistic goal is for him to get to 75% by the end of the year. Sometimes in a goal, it's important to give the environmental or instructional conditions that you're using. So in this example, given direct instruction, practice, and visual supports. So that's telling you as the teacher what the student needs to be successful. So that can be a great way, and you can see in the example before for Maggie, given direct instructional and visual support. So I know in order to collect that goal that I need to be able to do that. I need to be able to provide those supports. Again, there are different ways of making things measurable. Sometimes it's a percent, sometimes it's out of so many opportunities. Those are all different possibilities to make something measurable. I included in Canvas a rubric that is from the Indiana IEP Resource Center about effective IEPs and specifically effective goals. So this is just a part of that rubric that is specific to goals, showing you some of the key elements of making a goal meet the criteria that's established. So in week 8, you've got several things this week. A devotion that's due Friday, your discussion and your second voice presentation. As a reminder, email me or send me a Canvas message about what your topic is. I want to make sure that we've got a good representation of the different disabilities, the different needs that our students might display in our classrooms, so that our presentations cover as much topic as possible and we're not all doing the same topic. So far I know Kelly has ADHD, Sandra has autism. Those are the only two I've heard from. So make sure the rest of you, if you could send me your topics for approval, I'll let you know. That would make sure we're not doubling up. So you'll need to post that by Wednesday and then respond to 2 of your colleagues by Friday. You've got a reflection paper that's also due Friday, and then the end of course evaluation. You will get a link to the end of course evaluation, and once you've completed it, all you need to do is just upload that proof into Canvas so that can be graded. So that is it. If you have any questions this week, I know there's a lot to get done this week. If you have any questions, let me know. I'm glad to help. And I've really enjoyed working with you in this class, seeing your work. I'm excited to see how you pull everything together in this last week. Look forward to seeing your work. Thanks a lot.